is a problem that we have and is a problem that we must deal with. And that is why the NSWMA has a special education program in this financial year at a cost of over $200 million that will be used to sensitize the country as it relates to our garbage problems. And I am hoping that we will get the buy-in of every member of this House. Madam Speaker, one of the flagship of this government is our social protection program. I spoke earlier about the selfish service that our first respondent has provided through Melissa and after. To this category of special people, I must add the Board of Supervision, the matrons, the staff, the poor relief officers and the inspectors who manage our infirmaries and golden age homes across the country. They put their personal worries aside and focus on the vulnerable citizens. Whenever residents are relocated to shelters or in place that they have to be cared for, I can say proudly that those persons who work in our infirmaries and golden age home has done a great job in protecting those who are under their care. And I think the country should acknowledge and appreciate the work of our workers in the infirmaries and our golden age home. And it is fair to say that during the passage of Melissa, not one residence in our infirmary or golden age home sustained any injury during the passage of the hurricane. And I think that is something that we should be proud of. And during COVID-19, and I want to repeat it, none of our homes and infirmaries experienced any death during the COVID pandemic. And that is an outstanding achievement for a small country like Jamaica. So, Madam Speaker, we continue to put in the work within our infirmaries and to strengthen them and to make them a place that people will feel comfortable. We got approval to build 2 brand new infirmaries. The one in Trelawney was destroyed, and the one in St. Elizabeth is at a stage now where it is not possible based on the various issues. So we'll be building 2 infirmaries, 2 brand new infirmaries, one in Trelawney and one in St. Elizabeth, and then we'll be moving to build a 3rd one in the parish of St. Anne. That is the temporary location that will be housing the Trelawney Infirmary until we have constructed the new infirmary. This is our government at work taking care of the poor and destitute. Madam Speaker, we have also provided financial support to undertake works at the St. Elizabeth, Hanover, and Westmoreland Infirmary at a cost of $54 million. And to this point in time, Madam Speaker, we are doing as best as we can to ensure that we provide a safe place for these persons in our infirmaries. We have done upgrade work on the walls at the St. Thomas Infirmary. A new matron quarters was built in Hanover. A state-of-the-art kitchen and dining area was constructed at the St. James Infirmary to enhance meal services. Those works were carried out at a combined cost of $44.9 million. And the St. Catherine Infirmary, we opened a brand new therapeutic park and other facilities was built to enhance the quality of life of the residents. And I want to announce that this year, a new wing will be built at the Spanish Town Infirmary at a cost of 70 million Jamaican dollars. Work on building out the network of concrete indigent housing was curtailed by the hurricane. This year, we are providing $160 million to continue to build houses of quality and class for the infirmary. Never before in the history of Jamaica have we seen indigent houses of the quality like what this administration has been. The issue of our social cases at our hospitals has been a long-standing one. And this year, a special effort will be made to address it in partnership with the Ministry of Health and Wellness. $200 million will be spent to increase the capacity in our care facility to free up bed space for the people with medical needs. I now turn to the matter of the homeless, which has taken on new meaning in the context of Hurricane Melissa. The Board of Supervision, in partnership with the SDC, completed a national survey on homelessness. In the last quarter of 2025, the findings that was provided, 2,261 persons were found to be homeless. 52.5% of that number is located here in the corporate area. This is very sad, Madam Speaker. And let me say this. It is not Jamaica alone, and I want to give some figures to show with a global pattern of homelessness, especially in urban centers. Homelessness is rising in countries across the world, whether they are classified as developed, underdeveloped, or developing countries. UN Habitat Report of 2026 indicates that there are 318 million homeless people living across the globe. The World Population Review on Homelessness shows that it has grown significantly in Latin America and the Caribbean, affecting an estimated 8 million people. It has grown by 125% in North America, affecting 1.7 million people. More than 1.2 million people are homeless in Western Europe. Asia is estimated to have over 80 million homeless people. On the African continent, it is estimated that there are about 54 million homeless people. Here in Jamaica, Madam Speaker, this administration continues to take measures to take care of our homeless citizens. Over the last decade, we have been building a growing number of drop-in shelters, night shelters, transitional shelters to give the vulnerable Jamaicans security, space where they can shelter, where we provide nutritious food, medical care, and we also, Madam Speaker, in our shelters, provide employment for those who can work. And there are a number of persons who have been employed by the KSMAC, by the St. James Municipal Corporation. These are homeless people that we are taking care of. We're not only putting a roof over their head, but we are making them into worthwhile Jamaicans. Phase 2 of the Desmond McKenzie Transitional Center for the Homeless was completed in the last financial year. A total capacity of 80 homeless persons can now be accommodated at the new wing. The extension of the St. Thomas Night Shelter was completed at a cost of $12 million. The Member of Parliament was there. The Portland Drop-In Center Night Shelter was completed at a cost of $55 million. The new Member of Parliament, I guess, must have visited and see the work of the Andrew Holness administration. This year, the former mayor of Kingston and the longest serving female mayor in this region, Mary Atkins, will be spending $55 million to renovate the Mary Atkins shelter in downtown Kingston for the homeless population. As we build more infrastructure, our homeless population, Madam Speaker, will be protected. I appeal for a greater sense of compassion and civic concern. I am disturbed by the latest incident of violence against homeless people. The last major one was in St. Mary some 2 months ago when a homeless man was stabbed and had to be rushed to the Kingston Hospital. Let me say to my fellow Jamaicans, let us have compassion and care for these people. They are fellow Jamaicans just like all of us. This House will recall that last year I indicated that Cabinet approved His Excellency the Governor General would be asked to declare May 20th of each year a National Day of Remembrance for victims of the Evening Tide Home fire. It was a commitment I made to this House. And the first official service to mark that ugly event took place under 2 weeks ago at the National Heroes Park, where 26 coffins bearing the remains of 157 women who perished in the fire were interred. We preserve their memory. This incident was a stain on the pages of our modern history in this country. And we should never, again, the public conscience of this country should rise up and ensure that this never, ever happen again. I know, Madam Speaker, I don't want to get political, but when this government talk about protecting the interests of the poor and the destitute, we know what we are talking about. We have never hired dumper trucks and put street people in them and just dump them in mud lake. We have never done that. We provide facilities. We take care of these people. And we can stand proud. We can stand proud on our record of protecting the poor and the destitute in this country. Madam Speaker, the Jamaica Fire Brigade continue to reward the country, the citizens of Jamaica, for the investment that has been made, introducing cutting-edge projects to sharply improve service delivery. Vital agencies will also be affected, was also affected by Melissa. 6 fire stations was damaged. And I'm pleased to announce, and I see the Mayor of Montego Bay here, that the fire station in Ironshore will be rebuilt under the reconstruction of this government. So, we, Madam Speaker, in this administration, continue to work to improve the service of the Jamaica Fire Brigade. The estimated cost to build the infrastructure and to replace lost equipment is just over $1.4 billion. I am pleased to announce that while 311 firefighters were operating in 9 parishes that were directly affected by the hurricane, no lives were lost and none of our firefighters were injured. And we thank God for that. And they carried out their duty in a very efficient way. They responded to 1,661 calls between October 28 and December 12, 2025 that were linked to Hurricane Melissa. These included 615 fire calls, 116 medical emergency calls, 864 special service calls. The special service calls range from clearing block roads, rescuing residents that are trapped in communities, delivering potable water, power washing muds and silt from town centers. Madam Speaker, our country is proud of the Jamaica Fire Brigade, and I want to thank the men and the women of the Jamaica Fire Brigade for the hard work that they have been doing and will continue to do to help to rebuild back Jamaica bigger, better, and stronger, Madam Speaker. In addition to the rehabilitation of stations and the completion of current projects, the works are far advanced to ensure that every fire station can give 24-hour service by the use of generators. 95% of our island fire stations now have generators, and we have acquired 4 more in the last financial year at a cost of 33 million, and 2 more will be installed this year, Madam Speaker. So by the end of the current financial year, all fire stations in Jamaica will be equipped. It is happening for the first time under this administration. When we came in 2016, none of our fire stations had any generator. It is this administration that has done it. And we're going to talk about it. There's also additional, there's also additional firefighters to operate fire stations. I have the pleasure, Madam Speaker, of participating last month in the graduation exercise of another 100 trainees in the 3rd quarter of this financial year. The brigade will enhance its role in the national reconstruction phase as a major factor in the development approval process. It is working in regulating the built environment and to essentially ensure that this country will have the full service to respond to disaster such as hurricane and earthquake. Last year, the brigade inspected 11,228 buildings to ensure compliance with fire safety codes and standards. The inspection process will be one of unprecedented importance. And the reason why I say that, it is a vital component of the duties of the local authorities. They work closely with the Jamaica Fire Brigade to ensure that the Building Act as well as the building code are obeyed. The brigade work in the approval process includes comprehensive assessment of building plans, and the agency have reviewed over 916 plans last year. The brigade is now at a prominent part of the government's creation of a new Jamaica, where we can rely on them to ensure that the built environment, that the public becomes a part of what we are doing. The public infrastructure, and I want to say also the private infrastructure, even before the start of construction, because we are building, we are building more buildings. I want to remind the country that the input of the Jamaica Fire Brigade in the building approval process is something that we cannot bypass. Their input is important, and I want the country to be aware of that. Okay? Look, I will address you shortly. So Madam Speaker, I don't want to be thrown off time. So Madam Speaker, I want to say that the role of the Jamaica Fire Brigade is critical. And we are a part of the reconstruction of Jamaica, has been announced by the most honorable Prime Minister to rebuild the country, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the Social Development Commission continues to show great achievement. And I must say that this was one public body, one agency that never get a cent from government before. This administration was the first administration in 2016 to provide funding to the Social Development Commission to undertake its responsibility right across the country. 0%, 0 in the budget. 0 in the budget. 0 in the budget. 0 in the budget. Today, the agency has been transformed into a national organization, wealth program. The comprehensive research and expertise of the agency was critical in helping local and central government to make rapid, evidence-based decisions in the support of the national reconstruction. These include a national drainage assessment survey, temporary accommodation, in which damage assessments were done and potential sites were identified for erecting temporary accommodation. The agency conducted shelter transitional survey on children and others. In keeping with the ministry's effort to reduce the number of schools used as shelters, the SDC has completed a community center shelter review survey to ascertain the existing shelters across the country. They are also responsible in undertaking a market survey. One of the critical things that the SDC did, they conducted a comprehensive survey of the public perception on the One Road Authority. On the One Road Authority. It is interesting to note that the survey that was conducted on the One Road Authority showed that over 75% of Jamaicans, when they ask which road you want to be fixed, they want major roads and parochial roads to be fixed. 59% of Jamaicans agree with the One Road Authority. 59% of Jamaicans. I'm going to give you a copy of the survey. So, Madam Speaker, the One Road Authority will help to lift the standard. All mayors, every single mayor in Jamaica, was invited to a meeting at the Ministry of Local Government with the minister, my colleague minister. Over 4 hours, presentations were made. All of the mayors asked questions, one meeting. Yes. All the mayors were present. And let me say,
Minister Mackenzie, though you have not asked for my protection, let me caution you, using your valuable time to answer the questions from the floor, reduces your time for presentation. No. I'm giving him that time back. I love that part of the presentation. So I thank him for assisting with my opening statement. So, Minister, yes, you may take a water break and then we will recommence.
Water break.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I want to now move to another important aspect of the SDC's work, Madam Speaker. The SDC, Madam Speaker, has been placed in a position where the security of the workers are no guaranteed. The SDC, Madam Speaker, for decades was operating with peer contract workers. Peer contract workers. So there was no security for the workers. I am pleased to announce that under this administration, the SDC has now been given a proper structure where the job security of the workers are now secured. We are putting the SDC on a level to continue the work that it is doing through the programs to provide support in the entrepreneurial programs, providing grants, building out communities, expanding programs, and community centers included. And I know that there are members on that side, if they wish to speak the truth, can speak glowingly about the work that the SDC has been doing in their constituency. Right? So, Madam Speaker, I want to emphasize that we have strengthened the SDC and we have made it into an organization that Jamaica is proud of, and we want to support them to continue the work that they have been doing. Madam Speaker, I want now to turn to one aspect of the work that the SDC undertook, and that was the church restoration program. And I am very happy that we were able to commence the first phase in St. Elizabeth, and I'll be in Hanover on Friday for the second phase of the church restoration program. I want to conclude this presentation, Madam Speaker. The administration, no, Westmoreland is down. Westmoreland is down. The administration responding to the climatic crisis of Melissa by the reconstruction of Jamaica into a different and a far better country. That is what is before us today. The process will be strongly speed up as the National Reconstruction and Resilience Authority Act. We will be building back better and stronger. Madam Speaker, the local authorities have no fear about the bill that has been tabled, Madam Speaker. We are an integral part of it. We will play a critical role, Madam Speaker, in the reconstruction. I want to say to the mayors who I did not acknowledge earlier on, that your role will not be undermined in the reconstruction. So anybody telling you anything else, I misshave them, I make everybody will be a critical player in the reconstruction of Jamaica, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, our markets will be built back. The center of commerce, Madam Speaker. Last year, I spoke about the Alexandria market. Work is now on its way to rebuild the Alexandria market at a cost of $50 million. Work is on its way, Madam Speaker. We've spent $70 million in refurbishing the Yallas market, the Charles Garden market in St. James, the Savlabar market in Westmoreland, the Musgrave market, and the Highgate market, and the Black River market to be given priority under the program of rebuilding, Madam Speaker, the government is living up to its commitment. On the question of the street lights, I want to indicate the special program that I announced last year was set back by the passage of Melissa. I've been given the assurance by the Jamaica Public Service Company that as soon as they have completed the restoration, they will start the installation over the next 2 financial years of the street lights that was committed last year. Right. Yeah, new and improved lights. Also want to mention, Madam Speaker, to publicly thank our shelter managers and disaster coordinators who worked so hard during Melissa. I want to express the gratitude to those persons who use our shelters. Firstly, for heeding the call and move to the safety. And for secondly, for the patience and cooperation that was the general atmosphere at all of our shelters, Madam Speaker. I know it was a stressful time. I also want to give a brief update on the accommodation being built in Shrewsbury in Westmoreland. 10 of the 16 concrete bases have been completed. Those bases are required for the completion of the houses. All the necessary things is being done to facilitate. As soon as it is completed, the houses are in the care of the Minister with responsibility for housing and economic growth and the Jamaica Defense Force. As soon as that is completed, Madam Speaker, those houses will be moved to the location, and all the persons who have been registered, who we know will occupy the new housing facilities that is provided by the government, Madam Speaker. This, Madam Speaker, will tell you that we are working diligently to ensure that we do everything that is necessary. The shelters, Madam Speaker, we are working closely with the municipal corporations and the Office of Disaster Preparedness and Emergency Management. An additional $60 million will be set aside to the local authorities to assist in obtaining blankets and cots and other bedding materials to make life more comfortable in our shelters. This is the first allocation that will be made as we get ready for the hurricane season that is here with us. In addition to this, we are taking a different approach to shelter management. Instead of using multiple venues, we are looking, and based on the discussion, to build shelters in at least 3 parishes that can accommodate a large number of Jamaicans. In Westmoreland, purpose-based shelters that can be used for community facilities, netball, basketball, town hall meetings. And when the time comes, we move persons to these facilities. We're looking at the parishes of Westmoreland, Clarendon, St. Anne, and we're looking also at St. Thomas to roll out at least in the first phase of these, Madam Speaker. So, Madam Speaker, we are moving. One of the things, again, that we are going to be doing based on the Prime Minister's directive, that we must become proactive. Programs that will educate persons around the dangers, drilling exercise, and to the proper assessment. We are going to be employing 200 young Jamaicans that will be deployed to the SDC and the municipal corporation starting the 1st of July. They will work for the entire hurricane season. They will be deployed to work with disaster coordinators across the municipality in strengthening the disaster response capabilities. And I hope, Madam Speaker, that this will go a far way. So 200 young Jamaicans will benefit from this over the next 6 months. working in the areas of disaster. So the chairman of the National Disaster Risk Management Council spoke about the various things that needs to be done. And the government is fast-tracking these operations. Yesterday, I launched Operation Calm in St. Elizabeth, National Solid Waste Management Authority, to remove bulky waste from various communities. 5 parishes will benefit from Calm. 96 communities. Okay? Calm. C means clearing flood-prone areas of bulky waste. A, it's for advising the residents in these areas about their roles and responsibilities in managing waste during the hurricane season. L, leveraging the network of community leaders in flood-prone communities. And M, maintaining a presence in these communities during the hurricane season. It was launched yesterday. This is a good program. And already the people in Rocky Point supported this program tremendously. And we're moving to the parishes of Clarendon, Kingston, St. Andrews, St. James, and St. Elizabeth with the next phase of this program. We are combining government action to promote civic responsibility, community goodwill, to ensure that the people in these communities who can face hurricane season with a level of confidence instead of fear and uncertainty. We are also will be implementing a special drain cleaning program. Madam Speaker, $70 million will be provided to the municipal corporation, 300,000 to each division for drain cleaning. In addition, Madam Speaker, in addition to the 2 months PRF allocation that they have that is dedicated for drain cleaning. Okay? 2 months allocation for drain cleaning. And this is in the first phase of the drain cleaning exercise, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, we also will be rolling out another additional program, road program, to supplement the monthly, no, that no name, it's a program, the monthly PRF. The monthly PRF that the MCs get. And let me say this. Every month, the municipal corporation, every month, close to 700 million is provided to the municipal corporation for road maintenance. Every month, over 700 million. This $350 million that will be provided, Madam Speaker, will supplement the work, because we know after the hurricane, a lot of damage has been done, and this $350 million will be provided to assist for road patching and road maintenance right across the country, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the question of water is a major problem. As we continue to manage the hurricane, the Ministry of Water and the Ministry of Local Government, we had a meeting last week at the ministry to discuss the question of water. Shortly, we will be announcing a comprehensive water program involving the Ministry of Water and local government. But in the meantime, Madam Speaker, the drought is upon us, and we are going to be providing $65 million to assist St. Elizabeth, Manchester, and Portland to purchase 3 brand new water trucks to take us through this critical period. Local government is not only contributing to the national reconstruction through infrastructure, it is also doing it by historically new standards of service delivery. And Madam Speaker, I need to speak to this one because the country needs to know this one. The Jamaica Fire Brigade, Madam Speaker, will officially launch the emergency communication-based system in Waterford in St. Catherine. 24 firefighters were specially trained and graduated as emergency telecom operators in February of this year. The key feature of this is the system will alert and transmit emergency notification instantly. Madam Speaker, if you make a call within 64 seconds, that information will be transmitted instantly to the relevant fire stations, and the firefighters will be there in 60 seconds. This is a new initiative, Madam Speaker, and I am urging the country for that. So I can take my time. Okay. This groundbreaking project is being implemented in all phases at all fire stations across Kingston and St. Andrew. Part 1 of the program is now active. These are the most parishes that poses problems in terms of emergency calls and are highly populated communities, Madam Speaker. The Jamaica Fire Brigade has entered a new era of professionalism, technology. The readiness is to transform the Fire Brigade into an organization that is contributing to the build back of Jamaica by this administration led by Dr. Andrew Holness, Prime Minister. So finally, Madam Speaker, as I close, I want to conclude the presentation, Madam Speaker, with a reflection of the book of Nehemiah. It tells the story of the rebuilding of Jerusalem wall. And I believe that this mirrors our experience here. As we rebuild Jamaica, Nehemiah chapter 1 through 4 is about the destruction of the walls surrounding Jerusalem, which is like the destruction of Melissa, with the people left exposed. Then Nehemiah led the work of inspiring the people to help to rebuild the wall. A huge project. Just as our Prime Minister continues to secure goodwill to rebuild Jamaica. Then when you read further into Nehemiah chapter 2, verse 9, it tells you about the people who try to undermine and to prevent the reconstruction work from starting. Chapter 3 and 4 reveal how construction was organized. And I think about the National Resilience Authority. When you get to chapter 6, it says, a new wall of Jerusalem was built in 52 days. A historic achievement at the time. The book of Nehemiah is my biblical inspiration for what we are working to achieve. Reconstruction of Jamaica in record time that will benefit all the citizens and the wonder of the world for years to come. The administration, therefore, view the destruction of Melissa as a call to action. It is a call to reconstruct, not just to replace, a call to transform. This is not just to restore, Madam Speaker. We are heeding the call. The vision for the grand design has been laid out by our national builder, the Most Honorable Prime Minister. We continue to experience sincere goodwill and to receive practical assistance from countless partners here and overseas. Despite our challenges, we remain a blessed country. And I know that the Almighty will bless our efforts. Amen. And the praises Amen. Of this administration will sing in the hearts of the minds of Jamaicans for decades. History will record this administration as the administration that has done the job. I thank you, Madam Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, I want to thank the Minister of Local Government, Community Development and Member of Parliament for West Kingston, the Honorable Desmond Mackenzie, for a very substantive presentation. We will now go to the Member of Parliament for Manchester Southern, Mr. Peter Bunting, for his sectoral presentation.
You are okay to go, Mr. Member.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And feeling certain that I will not be treated as liberally with time as the Minister of Local Government, let me move quickly to thank my leader and colleagues, family and friends, personal support team, councillors and constituency executive, and last but not least, the proud citizens of Southern Manchester who allow me to stand here today. I rise today to address a portfolio that goes to the very heart of Jamaica's economic future, yet one that receives far less attention than it deserves. In budget and sectoral debates, in corporate boardrooms and public policy discussions, we regularly hear the words productivity, efficiency, and competitiveness invoked as though they are interchangeable concepts. For clarity, let me define what each means today for the purposes of my presentation. Productivity is the rate at which an economy converts labor, capital, technology, and knowledge into output. Efficiency refers to the extent to which waste is eliminated from that process. And competitiveness is the ability of firms, industries, and countries to succeed against rivals in attracting investment, creating jobs, and winning export markets. Jamaica's central economic challenge today is no longer macroeconomic stability. Through years of sacrifice by taxpayers, public sector workers, pensioners, and businesses, Jamaica succeeded in restoring a measure of fiscal discipline and financial stability. Debt to GDP ratios have fallen significantly. Inflation has, generally speaking, remained within the target range. International reserves have strengthened. These achievements were important and necessary. That's why the PNP administration, led by the most Honorable Portia Simpson Miller, started the process of economic reform. And we did most of the heavy lifting in achieving the successes of the last 14 years. But stability was never intended to be the destination. It was the foundation upon which growth, productivity, and the elusive prosperity could be built. Unfortunately, that transformation has not occurred. If you look at the chart on the screen, it's real GDP growth since 1980. Jamaica's long-term economic growth remains among the weakest in the developing world. Real GDP growth has averaged approximately 1% per annum over several decades. Labor productivity has declined. Foreign direct investment inflows have fallen sharply from their previous highs. Gross fixed capital formation has weakened. Real wages remain under pressure. For too many of our brightest and best, for too long, too many of our brightest and best have had to leave our shores in search of opportunities elsewhere. In short, we have stabilized the economy without transforming it. The IMF, the World Bank, and the OECD have all reached broadly similar conclusions regarding the drivers of sustained economic growth. Countries that prosper over long periods do so because they continuously improve productivity, strengthen institutions, invest in human capital, encourage innovation, and create an environment in which businesses can compete and grow. Countries that fail to improve productivity eventually encounter a ceiling beyond which growth becomes difficult. Wages stagnate and economic opportunities diminish. That is precisely where Jamaica is today. My colleague MP from Manchester, Minister Marks, in her sectoral presentation, cited increased numbers of online transactions, electronic payments, and digital government services as evidence of progress. And while these developments are welcome, I would say, Minister, activity should not be confused with productivity. Yes. Many Jamaican businesses continue to encounter duplicated reporting requirements, fragmented government systems, and lengthy approval processes. Only last week, we heard that more than 70% of transactions in Jamaica are still cash-based, something you would appreciate. Jamdex adoption, Jamdex, the central bank digital currency, Jamdex adoption remains negligible despite significant effort by Bank of Jamaica. Interbank payment systems continue to operate within constraints that reflected the old manual processing days at banks. The BOJ's RTGS, which stands for real-time gross settlement, operates from 8:30 a.m. to 2:30 p.m., 25% of the day. Automated clearinghouse, which is the bank clearing system, is still next day payment. This is not appropriate for the needs of a modern 24/7 economy. So my point is straightforward. Technology is an enabler, but not a substitute for reform. Moving bureaucracy from a counter to a screen is still bureaucracy. It's just digital bureaucracy. Productivity gains arise when processes are fundamentally redesigned. Responsibilities are clarified. Duplication is eliminated and institutions become more responsive. Technology can facilitate that transformation, but it cannot replace it. If there is one statistic that should concern every member of this House, it is the performance of Jamaica's labor productivity over the last quarter century. That blue line that's trending from left to right and goes almost to the horizontal axis is Jamaica's labor productivity measured by real GDP per worker over the last 25 years. An entire generation has grown up in an environment of declining productivity. During the same period, labor productivity in the United States increased by approximately 50%. China, of course, is a star. You have to use the axis, the vertical axis on the right for their index. Their labor productivity increased by more than 400% over that period. But closer to home, countries in Latin America and the Caribbean, with which Jamaica competes more directly for investment and export opportunities, have achieved substantially stronger outcomes. But economists often focus on total factor productivity, which measures the efficiency with which not only labor, but capital, technology, and organizational systems are combined. It captures innovation, management quality, institutional effectiveness, technological adoption, and the allocation of resources throughout the economy. In successful economies, growth in TFP accounts for a significant share of long-term economic growth. In Jamaica, it has remained weak for decades. What the graph shows, and 2021 is the base year, is that for our entire history, since independence, Jamaica allocated and combined resources more efficiently than it is doing currently. This is not a productivity challenge, it is a national emergency. Thank you. Well, I must say, I must say this is our first Prime Minister. This is our first. But you would understand, and the ministers that flank you, that this matters profoundly. Because productivity growth is not simply another economic indicator. It is the primary source of long-term improvements in living standards. Nobel laureate Paul Krugman famously observed that, and I quote, "Productivity is not everything, but in the long run, it is almost everything." End quote. Workers cannot sustainably earn more than the value they produce. Governments cannot sustainably spend more than the economy generates. Please do. Businesses cannot sustainably raise wages unless productivity rises. Mr. Speaker, I'm reclaiming my time. If productivity is the engine of economic growth, then human capital is the fuel that powers it. No country has achieved sustained productivity growth without simultaneously improving the skills, capabilities, and adaptability of its workforce. Jamaica faces a significant challenge in this regard. A recent, I believe last week, newspaper article quoted UTEC's president reiterating that of the approximately 30,000 students who sit CSEC exams annually, only about 6,000 or 20% achieve the minimum qualifications generally required for tertiary education. He said UTech alone could take half of those students, and there are 14 other universities and colleges competing for that 6,000. This means that 4 out of every 5 students leave secondary school without the credentials needed to fully participate in a modern knowledge economy. The education system continues to fail the majority of our students and needs to be fixed. However, the economic implications of this reality extend far beyond the education sector. Employers consistently report shortages of workers with adequate literacy, numeracy, technical and digital skills, even while hundreds of thousands of Jamaicans remain outside the workforce. The challenge becomes more urgent when viewed against the backdrop of artificial intelligence. The IMF estimates that approximately 40% of jobs globally will be affected by AI. Routine and repetitive tasks are increasingly susceptible to automation, while demand is growing for workers capable of exercising judgment, creativity, adaptability, and complex problem solving. These developments have serious implications, for example, for our BPO sector, which is said to employ 50,000 Jamaicans directly, but I suspect that figure is shrinking. The sector back in the day generated employment opportunities and transformed local economies like Mandibles. When we struggled to recover from the closure of the Kirkvine and Alpart alumina plants. However, many of the functions currently performed in customer service centers and back office operations are precisely the types of activities most vulnerable to automation. My information is that one of the largest companies operating in the BPO sector has already cut its workforce by almost 50%. The Prime Minister, in his budget presentation, identified the low workforce productivity challenge. However, he came with his administration's standard response: new acronyms. Since yesterday, we've heard of NEST, GRIFT, and CALM. GRIFT would be more appropriate. NEST, GRIFT, and CALM. But in that budget speech, the Prime Minister had already introduced NARA, JAMROC, and FAST. But then the PM continued, and I quote, starting in this financial year, HART will introduce a pilot of LEAP. LEAP is the acronym for Learn, Earn, and Prosper. And he went on to say, and we will expand CARE, the community action for rewarding engagement. So, Prime Minister, I acknowledge you have identified the challenge, but I don't agree with your solution to introduce a pilot of LEAP this year. Imagine, Prime Minister, the results of that pilot will probably be evaluated next year. And if it's positive, then maybe LEAP will be widely implemented in year 3. HART is a training institution whose curriculum evolves on a multi-year cycle in an environment where the relevant AI-driven technology changes every few months. This reality demands a fundamental rethink of workforce development policy. HART has made important contributions to Jamaica's development, but it was designed for a different era. The pace of technological change now requires continuous workforce adaptation. The opposition has stated repeatedly that the time has come to transform HART into a workforce development funding institution, rather than attempting to deliver training directly in every field. HART should increasingly support employer-driven training initiatives matching private sector investments in workforce development, and allowing workers access to accredited training providers. Such a model would ensure that training resources are aligned with actual labor market demand and not institutional assumptions about future labor demand. We must move from labor supply to talent supply. The winners over the next decade will be the countries that transform their workforce the fastest. Now I want to turn to the impact on tax policy on the entrepreneurial economy. The chart on the screen shows graphs of tax revenue, the lower blue line, and the other line above is the more comprehensive measure of revenue and grants that covers what the government extracts from taxpayers in fees, fines, levies, etc., in addition to taxes. That upper line has fluctuated between 27 to 31% of GDP over the last 10 years. This is higher than the average for Latin America and the Caribbean, which hovers around 21 to 22% of GDP, and much higher than the world average of 16 to 17% of GDP. In fact, it's really only the OECD countries that are above us, and we know the sort of welfare services and social services that they deliver. The majority of Jamaican firms surveyed find tax rates to be a major or severe obstacle to their operations. Equitable growth will only occur when thousands of individuals invest capital, take risks, and create opportunities. The overwhelming majority of Jamaican businesses are micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises. They represent the backbone of employment, entrepreneurship, and innovation. Economic growth does not emerge solely from large corporations or government programs. Yet this government's policy appears designed around the needs of only those large firms while imposing additional burdens on smaller enterprises. The recent decision to impose GCT of 15% on the revenues of short-term rental accommodation is a prime example. The sector has been a success story, growing rapidly from 60,000 guests in 2017 to over 800,000 in 2024. The short-term rental sector has democratized participation in the ownership of the accommodation sector. It has enabled thousands of Jamaicans all over, in Arnett Gardens, in Rockfort, in different parts of Jamaica, in Manchester, in Hanover, to become tourism entrepreneurs. Unlike the dominant enclave tourism model, a greater share of that dollar remains within the local community. Property owners, maintenance providers, transportation operators, restaurants, and local suppliers all benefit from stronger linkages to the domestic economy. Yet instead of encouraging this emerging growth sector, the GLP administration has chosen in Nicodemus fashion to respond with additional taxation in the depths of the night. Any justification that the move is a necessary measure to level the playing field in the accommodation sector is just plain poppycock. Large hotel investments in Jamaica qualify for substantial benefits under the Omnibus Incentives Act and the tourism sector framework. These huge multinationals enjoy significantly reduced corporate income taxes, productive input reliefs on equipment and construction materials, employment tax credits, and favorable capital write-offs for building expenditures. They also benefit from the tourist board's cooperative marketing and advertising frameworks that help large hotel investments scale their occupancy and reach. None of these incentives are available to the short-term rental sector that is still liable for income tax and earnings in their standard rate. This is the type of behavior that has prompted progressive leaders in the Caribbean and elsewhere to recently warn, and I quote, not to replace sugar plantations with hotel plantations, end of quote. A rebranded plantation economy built around leisure instead of sugar is still a plantation economy. We don't want an economy where the average Jamaican can only aspire to be a worker, not an owner in his own country. So this is not a debate about taxation alone. It is a debate about ownership. Jamaica's objective should not be an economy in which our citizens can only aspire to serve in the tourism sector. It should be an economy in which we can own a part of the tourism sector. Another example of bad tax policy comes from a point I made in the 2018 sectoral debate. It's worth repeating at this time when geopolitical tensions have sent fuel prices skyrocketing and the pass-through inflation now threatens our country. Still struggling to recover from Hurricane Melissa, with the prospect of increased interest rates to battle this pass-through inflation. These high fuel prices will provide a tax windfall for the government because of the ad valorem SCT on fuel. I say now is the time to give both businesses and consumers some badly needed relief. I support calls to cap the ad valorem SCT on fuel, but I go further and call on government to eliminate SCT on fuels altogether and instead include fuels in the base of GCT. This would reduce the burden of cumulative taxation on registered taxpayers and thus improve economic efficiency. Now, Mr. Speaker, I want to turn to the matter, to a section that I call institutions and bureaucracy matter. One of the most damaging taxes in Jamaica is one that never appears on an invoice. It is a tax imposed by bureaucracy. Every entrepreneur experiences it. It is paid in delays, uncertainty, duplicated paperwork, and lost opportunities. Economists describe these burdens as transaction costs. In successful economies, institutions are designed to minimize them. In Jamaica, too many institutions continue to generate them. The result is lower investment, slower business formation, and weaker productivity growth. But productivity, and I want you to listen to me carefully, productivity is not solely an economic issue. It is also a governance issue. The most productive economies in the world are characterized by strong institutions, predictable rules, and high levels of public trust. Investors do not simply evaluate tax rates or labor costs. They assess whether contracts are enforceable, regulations are predictable, and institutions operate fairly. Recent controversies involving the treatment of independent oversight institutions should concern anyone interested in Jamaica's competitiveness. These controversies include the NARA Act, which many see as a naked power grab by the Prime Minister, giving the agency and the PM sweeping executive powers with a lack of institutional guardrails and the ability to bypass traditional regulatory oversight. A few years ago, the PM overruled NEPA and granted a permit to mine in the ecologically sensitive Dry Harbor Mountains. The Constitutional Court in a recent landmark ruling declared the permit and the PM's decision, I quote, unconstitutional, void, and of no effect, end quote. The Prime Minister, and I go on to a third example of these controversies. The Prime Minister, in an unprecedented move for a sitting Prime Minister, took his own state oversight body, the Integrity Commission, to the Supreme Court. He filed over 20 applications seeking to nullify the IC's investigative report and challenge the constitutionality of the core provisions within the Integrity Commission Act that his government passed. The fourth example is the oversight, is Parliament's own oversight of the executive, which is being systematically undermined. Yes. The presiding officers have abandoned any pretense of impartiality. Yes. And the 3-month delay in tabling the recent IC investigative report on the FLA is one example. Ministers sitting on parliamentary oversight committees, such as the PAC, are examining AG's reports for periods covering their own stewardship, which is crazy. Even where there are allegations of improper ministerial interference. Government members on the PAC and PAC appear to do everything to obstruct the work of the committees. Even yesterday, with the email system not working, there was a sheet that went around asking who had received the email from the committee clerk of the PAC's annual report. Every opposition member confirmed receipt of the email, and every government member denied receiving it. This is from their own parliament. Independent media is also a critical, plays also a critical oversight role in democracies. In Jamaica, our remaining independent media houses and investigative journalists are barely surviving. They're in the intensive care unit. There is an acute viability crisis for legacy print and broadcast organizations worldwide, and Jamaica is no different. Many close or merge, while others survive only as propaganda outlets for wealthy oligarchs or authoritarian governments. Given what is happening with our oversight institutions, and I draw your attention to the chart, given what is happening with our oversight institutions, it should not be surprising that net foreign direct investment inflows as a percent of GDP have declined to between 1.5% and 2% since 2020. This is less than a third of what we received as recently as 2015 and 2016, when net FDI exceeded 6% of GDP. Investors value certainty. Entrepreneurs value predictability. Businesses make long-term commitments when they believe that rules will be applied consistently and institutions will operate independently. Yes. Strong institutions encourage investment because they reduce uncertainty. Weak institutions discourage investment because individuals and businesses must devote additional resources to navigating risk and unpredictability. Productivity, therefore, depends not only on economic policy, but also on governance quality. Yes. So, Madam Speaker, in conclusion, the story of the last 14 years was stability. The story of the next decade must be transformation. Jamaica does not suffer from a shortage of talent, nor does it suffer from a shortage of ambition. Jamaica doesn't suffer from a shortage of entrepreneurial spirit. What Jamaica suffers from is a shortage of systems that allow our people to realize their full potential. The Jamaican worker is not the problem. The Jamaican entrepreneur is not the problem. The Jamaican student is not the problem. The problem is that too often we ask our people to compete globally while forcing to operate inside systems that belong in the past. Stability was the foundation. Transformation must now be the mission. Productivity must be the pathway if we are to reach that elusive destination of prosperity. And that is the Jamaica our people deserve. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You have lifted the bar.
Oh, there's a competition going on.
House Leader.
Yes. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I want to thank the member from Manchester Southern, Mr. Bunting, for his very data-focused presentation. We'll now have the Member of Parliament from St. Elizabeth North Eastern, Ms. Jalika Jess, who will now join us for her presentation.
You'll get it there. You'll get it there. Slowly, you'll get it there.
Permission to speak from a seat.
You may go ahead, Member Jess.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Permission to speak from a...
Permission granted.
Permission to speak from a seat that is
Yeah,
not my
I said
own.
permission granted.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. As I rise to make my maiden contribution to this sectoral debate, I must start by thanking God for his guidance and grace. I wish to thank the Leader of the Opposition, Mark Golding, for the confidence he has placed in me to shadow the critical portfolio of justice. Even though I must confess that at first I wasn't sure if it was a promotion or punishment. Either way, I promise to defend justice fiercely. I come to this role in my 15th year as a senior attorney with diverse experience and perspectives. I wish to thank my incredible hardworking team on the ground, led by my counselors, Councillor Everton Fisher, Caretaker Maurice Nemard, but particularly, Madam Speaker, Councillors Champy Myers and Donovan Pagan, who have been my shield and my protector. I wish to thank my phenomenal family in northeastern St. Elizabeth. Thank you for saying yes to Jess and a young fresh baby. I promise to represent your voices stridently, even if some of the phone calls I receive are about asking me to personally help you to find a wife, or to personally reimburse you for the damage done to your vehicle by the potholes along Santa Cruz. To my friends and long-suffering family, thank you for putting up with my long days and late nights on the political battlefield. You are my anchor and my sanity. Madam Speaker, this maiden presentation is not mine alone. It belongs to the people of northeastern St. Elizabeth and to every Jamaican demanding a fair, transparent, and accessible justice system. I am deeply honored to speak on their behalf today. But we cannot speak about a fair and accessible justice system when the physical infrastructure of our courts is an absolute disgrace. 7 months after Hurricane Melissa, the justice system in St. Elizabeth and Westmoreland isn't recovering. It is battering for life. So today, I must speak on behalf of the judges, the court staff, the attorneys, and the thousands of ordinary Jamaicans who are being forced to search for justice in ruins. Madam Speaker, let us look at the proud parish of St. Elizabeth, from which I now hail. The historic Black River Courthouse was battered by Hurricane Melissa. And what was this ministry's brilliant emergency plan? To cram the displaced staff into the Santa Cruz Courthouse, which was never designed to carry this capacity. Go to Santa Cruz right now, Madam Speaker. The conditions are utterly degrading. In January of this year, court staff were driven to fury because they were being forced to work in a building with no running water, no water for sanitation, no water for dignity. How can this administration boast of a modern justice system when our court workers cannot even wash their hands? Under this government, Madam Speaker, the wheels of justice aren't just turning slowly, they are grinding to a dirty halt. But the lack of water isn't even the worst part. The security infrastructure under this administration has completely collapsed. Just months ago in Santa Cruz, it was reported in the news that a member of the public barged straight into the court office and grabbed a box of legal files. It took the court staff themselves, who are ordinary workers, not trained security personnel, to physically fight off the intruder and knock the files from his hands. This happened at the Santa Cruz courthouse in January of this year. But let us move on down the road, Madam Speaker, to Westmoreland. The Westmoreland Parish Court is out of commission. Initially, the minister boldly declared in November 2025 that the resources were available and that they were looking to secure a contractor under emergency procurement to restore the courthouse in the shortest possible time. But a few moments later, what do we hear, Madam Speaker? Now the minister says it will be too costly to repair. A total shameless flip-flop. Madam Speaker, the minister's assurances carry no weight. First, the money was there to do the repair. Now the building cannot be repaired. This isn't governance. It is pure double talk designed to hide delay and incompetence. They are talking in circles to hide the fact that they are dropping the ball and the people need justice. In light of the fact that the Westmoreland Parish Court is compromised, ordinary citizens are now forced to cross parish lines into Hanover to access the circuit court all the way in Lucy. Madam Speaker, think of the staggering economic punishment. Madam Speaker, think of the staggering economic punishment this inflicts on the people of Westmoreland. Madam Speaker, I see that those on the government aisle do not wish for me to speak the truth today, but we are going to talk about justice. Think of the astronomical expense for jurors, for litigants, for lawyers who must find transportation and meals just to travel back and forth to Lucy day after day because there is no court in Westmoreland to accommodate circuit. Madam Speaker, this government has turned the right to a fair trial into an endurance trek. Madam Speaker, they can howl all they want, but until they fix the justice crisis in the West, we will speak about this in the halls of this parliament. This ministry has turned the right to a fair trial into an endurance trek. This is not administering justice. This is navigating an obstacle course. The Minister of Justice speaks about first-class justice system and modernization of the justice system, but I challenge the minister today, leave your air-conditioned office in Kingston, come down to Santa Cruz, come down to Westmoreland, work in a court where there is no running water, pay the taxi fare from Lucy, pay the taxi fare from Savlamar to Lucy, and tell the people why they should tolerate this injustice. Madam, thank God for the late, great Roger Clark's legacy. Madam Speaker, don't take my word for it. The Chief Justice himself stated that this ministry is an unreliable partner. This statement was made after it was revealed that the judiciary had to use its own budget to carry out emergency court repairs in Western Jamaica to give judges a place to work. When the courts have to stop focusing on clearing backlogs and instead start acting like building contractors just to put a roof over a judge's head, That is not a success story. It is a total system failure, and the people need justice. Madam Speaker, there is no context in the world that would make the words unreliable partner sound good when they come from the head of the judiciary. Those words aren't opposition talking points. That is a direct, unprecedented indictment from Chief Justice Brian Sykes. When the highest judge in the land publicly states that the judiciary cannot be trusted to provide basic functional infrastructure, that is a vote of no confidence. Hurricane Melissa was an act of nature, but this delay in restoring our courts is an act of sheer incompetence. We are not blaming the minister for the hurricane. We are blaming the minister for the total absence of a recovery plan. It does not take 7 months to connect a water tank so that court workers can wash their hands. It doesn't take 7 months to post 1 or 2 police officers outside a courthouse to secure court files. Madam Speaker, if the Chief Justice of Jamaica can find the resources to fix the court infrastructure, what is the minister doing with his? And if he has none, is it that logistics has prevented the good Prime Minister from directing some of the barely touched disaster recovery funds to restore access to justice in these hurricane-affected parishes? I put it to you, Madam Speaker, justice under this government is a disaster in need of recovery. I urge the minister to commission and fund an emergency infrastructural and security audit of all rural courthouses across Jamaica. We demand immediate police security deployment to the Santa Cruz courthouse. We demand clear timelines and urgent allocations for the construction of the St. Elizabeth and Westmoreland parish courts so the people can access justice. Madam Speaker, I turn very quickly to an issue that I dub the legal aid injustice. Too many ordinary Jamaicans are being completely locked out of the courts because this administration refuses to expand the categories of cases covered by legal aid. The legal aid framework is rigidly structured to primarily cover criminal matters. But what does the data actually say? The data shows that the vast majority of citizens requesting legal aid are begging for help with civil matters over criminal matters. According to the Legal Aid Council, 90% of legal requests received from members of the public are for civil matters, particularly divorces tied to incidents of domestic abuse. Madam Speaker, access to justice cannot be a half measure. When a government limits legal aid to a narrow band of cases, it effectively closes the doors of the court to the poor. We see the consequences every single day in our courts. Unrepresented litigants struggling to understand complex legal rules, overwhelmed judges trying to balance the scales, and ultimately a breakdown of public trust in the rule of law. According to the Chief Justice's Civil Division Statistics Report, over 16,000 new civil cases are filed in the parish court every single year. But the report also shows that in up to 70% of those civil cases, at least one party is completely without a lawyer, forced to face a judge completely on their own. Madam Speaker, it is a David versus Goliath battle where the state refuses to give David a sling, not even a stone. What makes this absolutely worse, Madam Speaker, is that it has absolutely nothing to do with lack of resources. During the recent Standing Finance Committee right here at Gordon House, the Minister of Justice openly admitted on the record that the money is there. He proudly declared that the ministry satisfied all claims by attorney and has the fiscal space. Therefore, let us call it what it really is, a total lack of political will and complete indifference to the plight of the poor. The money is there. The budget has the space. The minister confessed that the funds exist. Yet this administration chooses to let those funds sit idle while poor Jamaicans are crushed by legal fees or forced to forfeit their rights because they cannot afford an attorney. The people do not want any more excuses, Madam Speaker. We do not want public relations mobile units that can only give legal advice but leave citizens defenseless when a civil trial actually starts. We demand that the government stop hoarding these resources, listen to the data from its own agencies, and immediately amend the regulations to expand legal aid categories to cover civil matters. Stop locking the poor out of justice. Madam Speaker, I move to address a deep inequity in our community justice system. The total lack of financial support, stipend, or expense coverage for Jamaica's justices of the peace. The Ministry of Justice expects over 7,000 JPs to render strictly voluntary service. They are forbidden. The Ministry of Justice expects over 12,000 JPs to render strictly voluntary service. They are forbidden from accepting any payment or reward, yet the state relies on them to process bail, to visit lockups, to conduct mediation. Active JPs must currently pay for their own stationery, printer, ink, travel costs to courts and prisons out of their own pockets, and even fund their expenses to serve in court as lay magistrates. Madam Speaker, this is not sustainable voluntarism. It is institutional exploitation. Madam Speaker, I do not yield. I do not yield, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the Minister of Justice continues
Member Jess. Member Jess. Member Jess. Member Jess. Please sit. Please sit. Member Jess, please sit. Listen, you know, if you would only learn the standing orders, you see members, I would so appreciate it. Member Jess, please take your seat. Minister Chuck, please quote the standing order number on which you are raising a point of order.
The member is misleading the House.
That is not a... that is not a...
Go ahead, go ahead, go ahead, go ahead, go ahead.
You need to stop. Member Jess, I have not turned your mic on so that your time does not run. And I'm using this opportunity to reiterate what is not a point of order is misleading the House. Points of order are statements made in a debate that contravenes the rule of the House. And therefore, points of interruptions, which is subsection 2 or B, are requiring the member on their feet to sit and allow the courtesy of the other member saying what their point is of interruption or clarification. And so this is another teaching moment for us. In addition to which, since I've already interrupted the member on her feet, members, allow her to do her presentation as is required in silence in the House. Members, I am sure that I'll soon complete my research in dropping some additional instruments in the House that help us to hear all of these comments that I can barely hear up here. I'm sure the public would love to know what we are saying, and I would love to know too. Member for St. Elizabeth Northeast, you may continue. And member, in order not to interrupt you, I'll ask the assistant clerk to add your additional time at the end, so the mic will, the monitor will go off when you're finished.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the Minister of Justice continues to flatly reject proposals for a stipend for JPs. He calls it a pure voluntary post, ignoring that the cost of paper, gas, and electricity makes it a luxury only the rich can afford. True justice cannot run on charity alone. The opposition demands a modernized framework for our JPs. Madam Speaker, this administration is completely out of step with global trends. There is clear established international precedent for the financial facilitation of JPs, proving that voluntarism does not require a person to compromise their own livelihood. The opposition urges the ministry to look across the globe and recognize how modern democracies practice or protect their JPs. In the UK, in Australia, in Canada, in those jurisdictions, JPs are also volunteers, but they receive a loss of earnings allowance and travel expenses. They do not pay out of pocket to serve the Crown. The state actively reimburses them for the costs incurred while delivering justice. The opposition is not calling for a lavish salary. We're calling for an enforceable, transparent stipend modeled after international best practices. It is time to treat Jamaica's JPs with the global standard of dignity they deserve. We pay notaries public to notarize documents, and we pay judges to hear cases. Why shouldn't we offer our JPs a stipend to cover out-of-pocket expenses? Madam Speaker, the primary duty of this House is to pass laws that deliver justice, not absurdity. I turn now to address a glaring crisis in our judicial system. The Firearms Prohibition, Restriction, and Regulation Act requires urgent common sense amendments. I would be the first to join any sensible effort to be tough on crime because it is a monster that must be tamed and eliminated. That said, it befuddles me as to why we would seek to use a hammer to hit a mosquito. This administration passed a law so poorly thought out that it has ceased to protect the public and has instead made criminals out of non-violent Jamaicans, including creatives. Just weeks ago, Madam Speaker, a music producer was slapped with a mandatory minimum 15-year sentence, not for a real weapon, but for imitation firearms used as props in music videos. Not a single bullet could ever leave those plastic barrels. Yet this government used a 15-year sledgehammer to crush a creative professional who posed no threat to public safety. A prominent defense attorney recently lamented the sheer absurdity of this regime by revealing that the state actually wasted time and precious resources conducting ballistic tests on a cardboard cutout of a gun. Cardboard, Madam Speaker. Under this government, a cardboard cutout is being taken to a government lab to test if it can fire a bullet. Government forensic experts are performing ballistics on cardboard. Madam Speaker, this Parliament must act without delay. We must urgently amend this law to restore full, unrestricted sentencing discretion to our judges. And we must make these amendments retroactive, so those currently suffering under this legislative failure can have their sentences reviewed. Madam Speaker, if we needed any further proof that the administration of firearms in this country is broken from the top down, we need look no further than the Integrity Commission's own report 37 of 2026. That report tabled yesterday found that the Firearm Licensing Authority, under the watch of its Chief Executive Officer, Mr. Shane Dallin, presided over a vault where ammunition belonging to private citizens went missing. A computer system that was deliberately manipulated to destroy the livelihood of a licensed dealer using the identity of a man who was already dead. And a server whose catastrophic failure conveniently erased the very evidence that would have identified who gave the order. Madam Speaker, a man who runs an authority where the dead are used to falsify records, where vault doors cannot account for what is inside them, and where evidence disappears without consequence, has no business holding public office. The People's National Party therefore calls unequivocally and without reservation for Mr. Shane Dallin to resign immediately. The People's National Party therefore calls unequivocally and without reservation for Mr. Shane Dallin to tender his immediate resignation. The people of Jamaica deserve leadership that upholds the law, not leadership that the Integrity Commission itself has found wanting. Madam Speaker, the people need justice. But Madam Speaker, justice is not about a sentence handed down in a courtroom. Justice is a lived experience. This administration likes to paint a beautiful picture of justice, but my job today is not to admire the paintwork. It is to open the hood and examine the engine. The engine of justice is making a rattling sound sparked by an alarming rise in police fatal killings. And let me be very, very clear. I will forever defend the police's right to defend themselves when faced with deadly force from criminal elements. But the latest Indicom data shows that 133 persons have already been shot and killed by members of the security forces since the start of this year alone. Madam Speaker, the engine of justice is rattling. This rattling requires us to confront the dangerous rhetoric coming from the very top of our justice system. Instead of demanding accountability, the Minister of Justice recently responded to these tragedies by declaring that the law allows police to use reasonable force, including deadly force, to stop a fleeing suspect. To tell a grieving, terrified nation that running away gives the state a legal right to execute you on the streets is a grave mistake. The engines of justice demand protection of the right to due process. The engines of justice demand a fair trial. The engines of justice demand the presumption of innocence. Running away must never become an automatic death sentence, nor can we allow the ministry to rewrite the law to justify street-side executions. Madam Speaker, equally troubling is the police commissioner's dismissive response. Madam Speaker, might I have your protection? Madam Speaker, equally troubling is the police commissioner's dismissive response, defending police failures as being viewed through the lens of hindsight. But when lives are lost, evaluating police actions is not an exercise in hindsight. It is a demand for foresight. It is a demand for training. It is a demand for the use of body-worn cameras, and it is a demand for basic human rights. When the police commissioner, in the wake of public outcry, tells rank and file officers not to become paralyzed by criticism, he is building a wall of institutional arrogance. He is telling his men that they are above the law, above the people, above accountability. Madam Speaker, the people need justice. Following the devastation of Hurricane Melissa, our people were promised relief. Donors sacrificed and gave generously to help families rebuild. Over 1.44 billion in cash donations poured into government hands. Yet according to the Auditor General's report, this administration only spent a measly, insulting 1.8% of those funds. While many Jamaicans are still sleeping under tarpaulins, while schools remain damaged, while small business owners are struggling to rebuild, millions of dollars sit idle in government hands. Only 1.8% has trickled down to poor Jamaicans who lost everything. Madam Speaker, the Prime Minister refused to admit his failure by stating that they wanted to get the perishables out first. Is this a confession, Madam Speaker? Is this a confession that this government does not know how to multitask? What is the Prime Minister's explanation for unused relief monies from burial 2 years ago? Madam Speaker, the people need justice. I turn very quickly to the $1 billion solidarity program that was announced to rescue our Jamaican people. Yet the Ministry of Labour just issued a press release claiming that $533 million was returned to the consolidated fund. They tell us that nobody pocketed the money. They tell us that returning $533 million to the consolidated fund was simply a legal requirement under standard financial regulations because the fiscal year ended. In other words, Madam Speaker, the ministry's best excuse is literally, we didn't steal it. We were just too slow to spend it. But Madam Speaker, to the grandmother in my constituency who went to bed hungry last night, waiting for that $20,000 grant that the government promised, this rebuttal is a distinction without a difference. Whether it is called pocketing, reallocating, or returning to the consolidated fund, the bottom line is that the money did not reach the people, and the people need justice. Madam Speaker, when 75% of the persons targeted to benefit from that $20,000 grant did not get access to those funds, that is not justice. That is the government acting as both the giver and the ultimate taker, and the people need justice. Madam Speaker, justice means different things for different people. Justice is a smooth road for the people of northeastern St. Elizabeth who just want to reach home safely. Neglected roads are not just an inconvenience, they are a denial of justice. The continued neglect of our critical crossings is unacceptable. Windsor Bridge is on the verge of collapse and Grosmont Bridge is a ticking time bomb. This is not just a failure of engineering. This is a failure of infrastructural justice. The urgent repair of these bridges is a matter of life and death, and the people of northeastern St. Elizabeth need justice. The absolute peak of injustice, the ultimate betrayal of public trust is the scandalous execution of the Spark program in northeastern St. Elizabeth. The former Member of Parliament handpicked 10 roads for repair. All 10 roads were picked from one single division, and it happens to be the one JLP controlled division. Meanwhile, the three PNP controlled divisions have been complete.
House Leader, House. House Leader, if the opposition does not stop, there will be no extra time given, even if requested by the House Leader. So I would encourage the members of the opposition to please be quiet. And Miss Burchell, Member Burchell, could you kindly not do that? Let me, would you like me to go back to your member from South St. James? Inappropriate. House Leader, members of the opposition, members of the House, the members' time for St. Elizabeth Southeast was already increased because I said to her, I did not want to break her again because I'd stopped her when Minister asked for a point of order. So the clock, you know, no, it doesn't matter what you have left. I am giving her 1 minute to wrap up. Okay, House Leader, no additional time. No additional time. No additional time. House Leader, don't turn your mic on again, member. Member, do not turn your mic on again. House Leader. House Leader. Member, if you turn your mic on again, you will not get any additional time. If you don't obey when you are spoken to in the House, you will not be afforded the courtesies to extend. The House Leader came up, he asked for additional time. I've asked you to be quiet, I've asked you not to turn your mic on again, and you refuse. No, because the House Leader needs to speak. I told her not to turn it on. House Leader, please turn your mic on.
Madam Speaker, I'm asking that the member be given 2 minutes to complete her presentation.
Members, so you hear, I extended the member's time already, and I asked the member to take her seat and do not turn on her mic. I'm asking, when instructions are given in the House, that we abide by the instructions. Question is that the member be given 2 minutes to complete. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. Member from St. Elizabeth Northeast, you may proceed. Turn your mic on.
The 3 PNP-controlled divisions in northeastern St. Elizabeth have been completely left off the Spark program. Not one single road was selected from the Braze River Division. Not one single road was selected from Silo Division. Not one single road was selected from Balaclava Division. Not one. The 3 divisions represented by the People's National Party have been completely starved of resources on the Spark. They have received 0 road allocations on the Spark. This is not justice. This is political victimization. This is the weaponization of public funds. This is the weaponization of public funds to punish people for how they vote. It is corrupt, it is malicious, it is a dangerous denial of justice to the thousands of people in northeastern St. Elizabeth, and the people need justice. Madam Speaker, we envision a justice system where if you run in fear from a system that terrorizes you, you are not executed on the streets. We see at Jamaica where top-paying jobs in multi-billion-dollar state agencies are distributed by merit and not by DNA. True justice cannot exist when the hiring process somehow conveniently narrows down to a branch on the family tree. Justice belongs equally to the farmer in Monique, the vendor in Santa Cruz, the fisherman in Black River, and the child growing up in every district across this country. Under the leadership of Mark Golding, that is the Jamaica we seek to build, and that is a fight we will wage from the halls of this parliament to the streets. Madam Speaker, even the late great Bustamante would agree that this administration is not practicing equal rights and justice. I rest my case.
Madam Speaker, I want to thank the member from St. Elizabeth Northeastern for her presentation and all the members who presented today. I want to ask you to suspend the debates for the sectoral debates.
Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it.
Previously we had asked that the agenda be suspended and we went directly to public business. I'm asking that we recommit the agenda items from the beginning.
Question is that we recommit the agenda items. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. Clerk. Statement by ministers. Announcements.
Laid on the table of the House are the following: annual performance report of the Minister of Local Government. You're all talking. You're all talking. I'll wait on silence. Laid on the table of the House are the following: annual performance report of the Minister of Local Government and Community Development for the financial year 2025-2026, and finally, Ministry Papers numbered 31 to 34 of 2026, respectively titled Cabinet Agenda Issues dated February 2, 2026, February 9, 2026, February 16, 2026, and February 23, 2026. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Members, bills brought. No, I'm not here. Member, I'm sure you don't want me to. Bills brought from the Senate, petitions, papers, reports from committees, notices of motions given orally.
Madam Speaker, I beg to give notice at the next sitting of the House, I will move the following motion. Be it resolved that the monetary policy statement for the 6 months ended March 2026, supported by quarterly monetary policy reports dated February 24, 2026, and May 26, 2026, respectively, which were all laid on the table of the House of Representatives on the 2nd day of June 2026, be referred to the Standing Finance Committee for consideration and report. Madam Speaker, I further beg to give notice that at a later stage today, I will move for the suspension of the standing orders to enable me to take this motion.
Thank you. Questions and answers to questions?
Madam Speaker, as the time is now 5:22, I now move that the House be allowed to receive and answer questions beyond the time normally allowed.
Those in favor? Those against? If you're against it, the questions are yours, so you can vote against.
You want to divide?
Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. House Leader, you have any?
Madam Speaker, I beg to give notice at the end of 21 days. I will ask the Minister of Energy, Transport and Communications the questions standing in my name.
So, no, you will not be allowed today, member, and it's a teaching moment for you as well. Yes, so for you and many other members. So I won't say much further. I'm going to accept your resubmission. However, I'm going to ask that you also just drop an email, something officially from yourself, indicating that you would like to withdraw what you previously submitted. I won't refer to who the member is. Thank you, member. Motions that may be made at the commencement of public business requiring notice, motions relating to the sitting of the House, motions for leave to introduce bills, presentation of bills without leave of the House first obtained, public business. House Leader.
Madam Speaker, I now move for the suspension of the standing orders to enable me to take the motion, notice of which I gave earlier. And this is in reference to the BOJ statement and quarterly monetary policy reports, to referring it to the Standing Finance Committee.
The question is that the standing orders be suspended to enable the minister to take the motion, notice of which he gave earlier. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it.
I ask that the motion, notice of which I gave earlier, be approved.
The question is that the motion, notice of which the minister gave earlier, be approved. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. How, Leader of Opposition Business, a moment, please.
Madam Speaker, it is not intended to do any further business in the House today, so I'm asking that the House be adjourned for a date to be fixed.
Question is that this honorable House be adjourned for a date to be fixed. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. This honorable House now stands adjourned.
So why you come to me with that foolishness, you know? You elect a prime minister, and is a prime minister run the country. It is time we learn to hold our leaders accountable for their actions and stop making excuses for them. Stop making excuses. Otherwise, go elect the people who really run in the country. And I don't want the right start that stupid argument. Hold the people you elect accountable and stop making excuses for them.